everyone. Welcome to the Internet of Senses Sound Podcast. My name is Tyler Heaton. I am a sound designer and researcher in the Spatial Technologies Applied Research and Training Center at Lethbridge College in Alberta, Canada, where I specialize in the implementation of spatial media and technology in immersive experience design. Today, we are joined by Larry Goldberg, and you have one of the greatest titles on your LinkedIn profile, an accessibility sensei, which I love, and a consultant now with nearly 40 years experience making media more accessible. And today we're going to talk about how we can improve the experience for all audiences, and we'll get into a bunch of different things around accessibility and sound. Thank you, Larry, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. That title was awarded to me. I didn't give it to myself by a good friend who I used to work with at TechCrunch. And I thought, oh, I'm going to use that for sure.
Absolutely. So we'll start with a bit of an introduction. You have a great depth of experience working in the area of accessibility in media. Can you talk a little bit about your background and how you found your passion for accessibility?
Yeah, I think maybe it found me by amazing randomness and luck, but I've had so much fun doing this for my whole career. So I'm very grateful that I've been able to play with these tools, meet all such amazing people. I came at this from a love of media, and by media, that meant Super 8 films when I was in high school. My mother got a camera for opening a bank account and gave it to me, and boy, that kicked everything off. Making my own films, experimental, radical films. I look at them today and I love them. They're so ahead of their times, let's say. And from there, every kind of new media I can get my hands on, quarter packs, half-inch video, three-quarter inch, and then we move into the world of digital. But I also love computers along the way, and I had a chance to play with some of the early ones. And this notion of where computers and video come together, embedding data in a video picture, was closed captioning, really one of the earliest ways of marrying the two technologies. And I always wanted to be in media. I moved to Boston, tried to get a job at WGBH Public Broadcasting, really the pinnacle of television production in the Boston area. And after working at it and submitting my resume over and over again, a position opened up at the Caption Center, the place that invented closed captioning for television, started at WGBH. And I knew what closed captioning was, studied it in college, again, embedding data in a TV picture. My job interview was, do you know what closed captioning is? Yes, you're hired. It was kind of obscure back then. It was kind of new. And that just led to meeting people in the deaf community and getting to know people with sensory disabilities. WGBH then invented audio description for blind people, department called the Descriptive Video Service. So then I was looking at how do you make visual media accessible to blind people? And I headed up that department as well at WGBH. Around that time, the digital forms of media were really taking over with DVDs and the internet. And I realized there's a gap here in terms of designing these technologies that really can serve all audiences. So again, somewhat by luck and scheming, we got a major grant to open up the National Center for Accessible Media and really took on the whole question of what standards are needed, what guidelines, what tools, what policies. And that was such an enriching time, so great to work with innovators in the field, inventing stuff, exploiting things, and then got involved in some federal law. And there have been a number of pieces of national legislation that have advanced the field. The TV Decoder Circuitry Act required closed captioning capability to be built into every TV set. That changed so much. The Telecom Act of '96 required all TV shows to be closed captioned. Wow, the market really grew at that point. And then this piece of legislation called the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act, or the CVAA. One of the sponsors was my own Congressman Ed Markey, asked me to get involved in writing up some of the provisions that would be incorporated in the bill that would require media to be accessible. That bill passed, signed by President Obama in 2010. And at that time, the Federal Communications Commission asked me to chair a subcommittee to write the regs that go along with that law. That was a fascinating look into policy, working with the head of Disney Tech and ABC, a lot of advocates. And those regs were written in 18 months, were implemented, and that really opened the door wide and put a number of tech companies on notice. You folks need to redesign your technology to be fully accessible. One of those companies was Yahoo, who approached me and said, now you've done it. Now you've created a compliance situation for us. Would you like to come on board and help us figure out how we're going to do all this? And so after 29 years at WGBH in the nonprofit world, I jumped over to the for-profit world and found out the kind of impact you can have when you've got 800 million daily active users. One little change could make a huge difference. So spent 8 years at Yahoo, networking with internally, externally, with all the big tech companies, just creating these relationships left and right. And then left about almost 2 years now to start consulting with a bunch of startups. And of course, my requirement involved with AI, because how can you take a breath today without dealing with AI? And it's had a really interesting impact on the accessibility field as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that got on here for us to talk about later in our conversation, because I think you're absolutely right. You can't really look at the media world, or I think really any part of our daily experience now, without AI starting to be a part of that conversation. So I definitely want to get into how AI is factoring into accessibility in that world.